Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by Mike Gallagher. We've got a 10-game slate, I believe it is, if I count right, on our hands today. Not as big of an injury report as the usual 10-game slate, so we might be able to get out of here on a decent enough time. Mike, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Been great. Been hiking every day this week, so I'm just working and hiking now, which I'm happy with. So
Nice.
feeling pretty good today.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, it's actually like a beautiful day in New York City. I will not be getting outside, but I will be playing tennis tonight, so that'll be my activity for the evening. No DFS for me tonight, just tennis. All right. With that said, let's get into the games. Let's get into the injury report. Let's start off with the Lakers towards the bottom. Russell Westbrook is doubtful today. We'll see how big of a difference it makes for the Lakers going into Denver. What are your thoughts on Westbrook being absent from the rotation and how it would look for the Lakers?
First of all, the timing is hilarious. Earlier in the day, Darvin Ham says, quote, not today about changing the starting lineup. And then like an hour later, Westbrook gets listed as doubtful. Peak Lakers. The matchup's really important here, right? They're going against Denver. They don't have too much guard depth with Dennis Schroeder still out. I think, and they've got, LeBron as a ball handler as well. We've seen a lot of, we don't really know Darvin Ham's tendencies, but we know coaches in general like to go really big against Jokic. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Damian Jones get the start, basically bump everybody up and play AD at the 4, which also is something if Michael Porter Jr. does play, get to him in a second, that creates some mismatches for them. If they have LeBron at the 3, you're forcing MPJ to play either the center, AD, no thanks. LeBron, no thanks. Or put mismatches on, put like KCP on LeBron. They could really play the matchup game really, really well. So I think they would want to go bigger, and then they could use Damian Jones as a pick and roll guy if they do opt to go MPJ on him. So I think from a scheme standpoint against the Nuggets, it makes a lot of sense to go bigger without Westbrook just in this spot.
And if they were to go bigger, the other guards that would benefit in the situation still in terms of picking up some minutes, because I don't expect Damian Jones to replace the full 28, 30 minutes that you're expecting from Russell Westbrook. It would probably be more along the lines of something like 18 to 25 would be my guess, would be somewhere in that range for Damian Jones if he were to draw the start. Who are the beneficiaries in the absence of Russell Westbrook in the backcourt?
Definitely, I think Kendrick Nunn's a guy they're going to want to count on for offense. He does help their spacing issues. We know they've talked constantly about this three-point issue that's been arguably the most talked about issue among any team in the NBA. We could talk about some other stuff with you guys could talk about it later with the Sixers and stuff and all that. But you would think he's in the mix. Definitely Austin Reeves is a guy they trust. He is, quote, their Swiss Army knife. So naturally, if you're missing a key guy in your rotation, you could just debate if he's good or not, but he plays a lot of minutes, Westbrook. You want to count on guys like that, much like Bruce Brown on the Nuggets. So I think Austin Reeves and Kendrick Nunn are two guys that I would expect to pick up some minutes there. Maybe a little bit of Juan Toscano-Anderson as well with all that size that Denver has in the front court.
Do you think Patrick Beverley's minutes profile changes at all with the absence of Russell Westbrook?
They're going to really need him for on-ball defense, I think, too. So his minutes floor should be pretty good. I'm definitely a guy that picks up a couple extra, but as far as like the fringy / bench guys, I would expect those guys to kind of piecemeal it together.
You mentioned Michael Porter Jr. He is listed as questionable for Denver in this one. It's a load management situation. He played the back-to-back, and he's played a lot of minutes early in the season, so it's been interesting to see that they came out with the load management tag after playing that back-to-back, after playing a lot of minutes. My point being, I think this was unexpected. I don't think this was planned for. So I think they must be seeing something in the on-court data with him that suggests there might be fatigue. So what are your thoughts on if Michael Porter Jr. is unable to go tonight, how Denver would react in their rotation?
Yeah, same thing with Anthony Davis. I wouldn't be surprised if they go big here to take a little bit of pressure off Jokic somehow. We saw in years past, Mike Malone would start. The last time he played Anthony Davis, he started JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap. He went gigantic against an AD-led front line with, I believe, Dwight Howard as a center. So interesting. I wouldn't be surprised. It's kind of a galaxy brain. Zeke Naji. I think this is a spot where you want to throw him out there. He's got agility. He could space the floor a little bit. This seems like an opportunity they want to give to him. Malone is really pissed at a lot of guys and first and second units, and Nachi hasn't got an opportunity. So it makes sense to play him, throw him in the rotation, kind of change things up a little bit. Certainly, we'd expect Bruce Brown to undoubtedly pick up a nice little minutes pickup because he is their Swiss Army knife. They'll play him really 1 through 4 with the way this rotation's cut out. Probably see a little Devon Reed. We know they've been playing a pretty good bit of Christian Braun. So he's a guy that would pick up. And then Bones Highland should get all the backup point guard minutes because they'd be using Brown as more of a wing. That's Bruce Brown as more of a wing. So, and then Jeff Green would also benefit too. That's kind of the easy part there. But I want to see some Zeke Naji out there. I think this is a really good spot for him to showcase his talents in a matchup. I think they could really use his skill set.
I would note that it's been a slow start to the season for Jokic in terms of usage. His usage rate is down around 21-22% after a career best 30% last year. It was around 26-27% typically when they had a healthy Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray before. I think if Michael Porter Jr. was unable to go this game, I think you would see the usage rebound in a really, really strong way. In this one, I think you'd see a little bit more of the version of the Nuggets that we saw last year in terms of really running a ton of the offense through him. Aaron Gordon's been spectacular early in the season. That's what's picked up a lot of it. But I think he would have more defensive responsibilities and attention in this matchup with LeBron and with Anthony Davis if Michael Porter Jr. were to sit. So if Michael Porter Jr. is out, I would be looking at a big game from Jokic back to something that we saw last year.
Yes. To add to that, just real quick on Jokic, the usage is way down, as you mentioned, like 10 points down from where he normally is. His efficiency has been awesome. He's third in true shooting among players with 28 minutes. Giannis ahead of him. Number 1, Trey Murphy, 81.4 true shooting.
Yeah, Trey Murphy after last night, man. I think the dude took like 7 shots and made them all. Just incredible. Incredible run out for DFS purposes, because if you give that usage profile, that's tough to generate upside from just generally. But if you make every shot, it doesn't really matter. All right, let's get into the questionable tags on this slate. Scotty Barnes, questionable for Toronto. Once again, he missed last game. We saw Precious Achiuwa go ham. Shout out to the Toronto Beats. Shout out to you following the beat drum on the Toronto Beats this year, who were calling for big Precious Achiuwa season. What do you think the likelihood of seeing Scotty Barnes is tonight, and and if he's unavailable, how do you think it impacts things again tonight?
It matters. They're going against Embiid, right? So I think we saw them start Christian Koloko, who's not really a great post defender, and they've been using Precious Achiuwa in that role. Precious has been freaking awesome on defense. Obviously, the rebounding numbers have been really good. So I think they would just bust out Precious out of the gate. Scotty Barnes was game time. Never really thought he had much of a chance to play. It was more of just like, okay, he's moving in the right direction. Let's get him to warm up. So I think we haven't projected in just because we kind of have to give the game time decision some credence. So I think it's going to be tough to call. We'll probably get another game time for sure. But worth noting that in the last game, Thad's minutes got cut because Nick Nurse said they wanted to go, quote, traditional and play more of like straight centers, Precious classifying as a center, Boucher, Koloko, and those guys. He said Boucher actually looked really good in his return too, so keep that in your back pocket. Definitely, Precious is clearly the guy. But we'll see. A little bit more of the boosted minutes, right? We've seen FVV, Pascal, OG2 a little bit of a lesser extent play big minutes, and they swarm Embiid. So definitely going to put a lot of length out there. I'd expect them to play fairly large and. What a ridiculously slow game. These two teams are last in pace, the Sixers. The Raptors are third slowest pace, and their 2 starting lineups with a Scotty healthy lineup. They're the 2 slowest pace lineups in the league. This game's going to be a grind fest. So don't against two defenses that should be good. So really disgusting game environment.
Yeah, on the other side of that game, D'Anthony Melton is questionable for Philadelphia. He's had, a bench reserve role of like 18 to 22 minutes sort of early in the season. They have a lot of depth here that they could potentially use. Toronto is a matchup that, suggests the need for a little bit more size naturally. So how do you think if Melton was unable to go, how do you think they would replace his minutes tonight?
On track to play. So, it sounds like he's going to be all right. Pretty telling quote from Doc Rivers, because we saw him insert Shake Milton into the rotation. He says he's considering going 10 if he has a healthy rotation, but he was probably going to stick to 9. He said that he was debating between Shake, Furkan Korkmaz, and Matisse Thybulle, but he said Shake was like clearly ahead based on how he's been playing in practice and when they call on him, garbage time, etc. So Shake looks to be the 10th man. Obviously, if things change with Melton, it would almost certainly be Shake Milton picking up the vast majority of his minutes. Maybe we see a little bit, and you need the length, so you'd think it would probably be Matisse Thybulle.
Would have been my guess with this specific matchup. And also, like, it's interesting. I think they do view Shake clearly ahead of those other guys. Mm-hmm. But in terms of what Shake brings compared to what they need, which is more shooting and more on-ball defense, it's not really Shake's strong suit. And it's a disappointing sign for Tyrese Maxey if you're interested in like really finding Maxey's ceiling this year from a fantasy or DFS perspective, that they're even considering something like this, because Shake would then be on the floor with Maxey in another situation where Maxey's having to share the ball instead of primary ball handling stuff, and Maxey's just playing off ball. And we've seen Maxey's assist rate crater this season, and it's reflected in lower potentials, lower touch time passing the ball, lower passes made, and different things like that. So just a small note there that I think it's not a super encouraging sign for Tyrese Maxey's all-around production, that they're considering Shake Milton as the next guy potentially in line here. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to Indiana, where Miles Turner is questionable. It's an interesting spot for a Turner return against the Bulls. I don't know if we'll see him come back tonight. I think they're going to be awfully careful with Miles Turner just generally this season, because as long as he's not completely broken, he's a trade asset that's very, very valuable to them. So what are your thoughts on if Miles Turner returns tonight, and what kind of minutes situation would you see if he was able to get back on the floor?
A few things to factor in here. One, Scott Agnes, beat reporters, covered the Pacers for a while, said that Miles Turner was, quote, on the practice court. I don't know the extent of what that means. Secondly, Shams Charania 5 days ago reported he's supposed to miss at least a week. So, he shouldn't be in this game based on that timeline. He's certainly on a tanking team, it looks like. You would think he's not going to play. This strikes me very much as like Scotty Barnes, right? There was no chance he was playing. Let him go out there, let him warm up, let him be a game time decision, and that way he could be ready to go to have his routine for the next game when he should be available to play after the week hits. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Seems pretty unlikely. If he did return, pretty good indication that he's healthy, right? Again, maybe this means he did go through a full practice. I don't know the extent of that. So then, yeah, we'd probably put him, upper 20s minutes, because, again, they will, like we were saying with SGA, shout out to me for the flag plant, they're not going to put him out there less than 100%. So the minutes should be pretty solid if he's out there, but which obviously would affect Isaiah Jackson in a significant way, whose minutes have been not great even without Miles. So we'll see, but I'm expecting game time, expecting him to sit.
Should also note the history here with the team. Indiana is a team that last year listed Malcolm Brogdon questionable for weeks before Malcolm Brogdon ever played. So just as a note, this is a team that has been more aggressive in listing guys questionable and then not having them play. So we'll see on Miles Turner, but we're currently leaning as more than 75% chance that he's not going to play. And so we have him out, I believe, in our projections currently. We have the if then built if he is going to play. And I think that's like I think it's in Chicago, right? So it's an 8:00 game, I think, on the schedule. Yep. So we might know that one beforehand, might not, relative to luck.
One thing I wanted to add, and sorry, the depth charts, I'm going to update them after. I keep forgetting to do that. I got to set my alarm for doing this. It was Rick Carlisle's comments are so interesting in the backcourt. Like, he's talking up Ben Mathurin for a slow start, playing well in the second half, and he doesn't talk about Duarte ever. And he was talking about Andrew Nembhard playing well. So my point is, like, Nembhard might be coming for Duarte's minutes, like, in a hurry here. I'm curious if he's going to get a market for a trade. It's just been a horrendous start for Chris Duarte this year.
It's been a really difficult start. Would be an interesting fit there because Nembhard a little bit more of a pure point guard or combo guard, and Tyrese Haliburton has a little bit mix of both. I wouldn't want anybody on the floor that could potentially take the ball away from Haliburton if I was running the Pacers, but that's
I'm just saying for like the he's off the bench anyways, He
but like that would mean him and McConnell. It's weird. It's weird. There's a lot of ball handling on the team in general. It's just kind of a weird thing for Duarte to be a guy that they'd fall out of favor with. It's been strange.
It's just been the quotes have been wild. I just wanted to mention that like he's just trending down so quick.
All right, let's go to Houston, where Jae'Sean Tate is expected to return tonight, but still no Alperen Şengün. Questionable on Jae'Sean Tate officially. What are your thoughts on if he returns, how he returns? Does he slide right back into the starting lineup? How does this rotation look? Which we've seen a lot of different looks, right? We saw, Bruno Fernando. We saw Usman Garuba. Mm-hmm. Then we saw starting center was basically Jabari Smith with Kenyon Martin Jr. kind of shifting in the starting lineup. So if Jae'Sean Tate is available, do you expect him to start? Do you expect him to play starters level minutes?
I think yes on the starting part. We saw them go out to KJ Martin for the starting lineup, and he didn't really get talked up too much from Silas's comments after the game. And he really talked up Jabari as the 5-man, and we saw that a little bit in the preseason before Jae'Sean Tate hurt his ankle. I'm sorry, this was like practice sessions or something, because Jabari got hurt really early. But yeah, I think he starts. I think low 20s is a fair expectation. He's had some ankle injuries before. We saw him play through so many of them, like early in his career as a rookie when he was point Tate. But yeah, would expect him to start. Probably not going to be able to free Tari Eason. We'll see if this affects Usman Garuba. We know Alperen Şengün's not going to be there, but definitely going to have enough bodies at the 3-4 now. They've been using KJ Martin interchangeably as a 3-4, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of leapfrog Garrison Matthews and fill the rotation out that way. But yeah, it definitely sounds like Tate's on track to play. Not a big high usage player either, so he won't be affecting the Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Greens, and Jabari Smith. All have been playing really well. All three coming off really strong games in a rematch today.
Yeah, a couple things I'll note regarding my guy, Tari Eason. So before the season started, when everybody was healthy, it was my expectation that Tari would not be in the rotation to start the season. Mm-hmm. When they were starting Bruno Fernando, I felt even stronger about that because it was like pretty clean that Fernando is the starting center, Şengün is the backup center, Jae'Sean Tate is the starting power forward, KJ Martin is probably closer to the backup power forward and maybe backup 3, but Garrison Matthews also there as a backup 3. So Eason's minutes and opportunity was pretty limited to start. Well, the season starts, Jae'Sean Tate is injured. We see that they find a way to kind of move things around. Then we see them start Garuba over Fernando when Fernando goes down. And then they go to the Jabari Smith at center lineup. The point being, it looks very clear that Alperen Şengün is going to be the backup center all year long. I mean, unless something drastically changes here. It looks very clear that they're comfortable playing Jabari at the 4 or the 5. Paths have now opened that I think they are playing enough different positional lineup combinations that they can just play the guys they want to play the most instead of worry about positions, right? And so when you just want to play the guys you want to play the most, I think there's more room for Tari Eason to now be a more reliable part of that rotation, but there's still enough bodies there to project that it's going to be hard to keep the projection down until he clearly shows he's well ahead of the Usman Garubas and those guys. So just be aware. I think we have Tari for like 16 minutes, something like that now. The range is probably like 12 to 25. I mean, it's really, really wide depending on how they want to go about things if Jae'Sean Tate is back. I do think he'll eventually earn that time, and I think they'll get more and more comfortable with being able to play him in a pinch in center spots as well because of his great rebounding. But I think the volatility in the volume of players that they have in the front court that they're willing to try to use in different ways makes it difficult to get consistent playing time right now. I think it's going to be a little bit up and down with the young guys.
Mm-hmm. I'll add really quick that Silas hinted about Şengün starting, which sort of goes against everything he said to this point that he doesn't want to start him. But you kind of have to play with the hand you're dealt. You're missing Bruno. He did talk up Usman Garuba as well a little bit, so he's backing off this "we're not starting Şengün" take just a little bit from. He was full on it for weeks now, which is why I was kind of bumping him down in the 150. But
it'll be really interesting. I think they really liked what they had from Fernando, and it sounds like it's going to be a little bit of time before Fernando's back. And maybe that's where those comments are coming from, because I don't think they've liked what they've gotten from Garuba out as much. But it'll be interesting to keep an eye on for sure. All right, Portland, Justice Winslow questionable. We saw without him, their rotation got even tighter, if that's possible. They play pretty tight on the whole. Gary Payton Jr. Or Gary Payton II, excuse me, not Junior. Are we anywhere closer to seeing his return as well?
Not today, but his tag changed to a reconditioning tag. So He is past his timeline. He was supposed to be around when the season started, so looking good. We saw the last game without Winslow, they went smaller. They basically swapped out Winslow's rotations for Keon Johnson. So we saw this a lot too in the preseason. They were mixing in matches when they would play Nazir Little as a backup 3 and a backup 4 in the matchup in the last game. They clearly moved him as a backup 4, filled his minutes with Shaden Sharp and Keon Johnson pretty easily. So that's the plan pretty much regardless. And then when GP2 comes back, that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Low key, it could affect Nurk because I think Billups really likes these small ball lineups. Giving yourself another perimeter defender and not having to worry about Nurk's defense in certain matchups is something that I think could affect Nurk like a teensy bit. So I'm excited to see that chess piece get put on the board for the 4-0 / my Blazers.
Yeah, the things we know about the Portland is just generally that Nurk has a hard time maintaining really high minutes ceilings. So we know he's an incredible permanent producer, and the ceiling is there when he can occasionally reach up in those minutes into those low 30s, occasionally touching mid 30s. I think what Mike's saying is when they're fully healthy with the new roster, there's even more impediment to even getting into those ceiling minutes. So it might be a situation this season where we're waiting for Nurk's price to come down a little bit more to allow him to potentially hit the ceiling in 28, 29 instead of hoping that he can hit it in 31, 32, just because they might have different lineup combinations that they can play to get there. Okay. New outs and doubtfuls to note on this slate. Devin Vassell, my guy for San Antonio, been off to an incredible start this year. They're 3-1. Riding his strong play along with Jakob Poeltl and Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones and Josh Primo. How does his absence impact the Spurs rotation tonight?
Should be pretty easy, I would think. I think they started Josh Richardson at the 3 in place of Keldon in the preseason, but pretty easy to sub him in there. I think that I'd be pretty surprised if it's not him. They've been running Doug McDermott as a heavy 3-man. They run him a little bit as a 4, so we'll see a little bit more of Isaiah Roby, Keita Bates-Diop, and those guys. And then also we should get Romeo Langford in the rotation to fill not many minutes, but enough minutes to give Josh Richardson a blow. We've seen at times they play Josh pretty good minutes. So, could be viable against a Wolves team that should be good in defense. It has not been good in defense. They are getting really beat easily, giving up a lot of easy shots. Also, we saw them overlap Primo and Trey Jones when they didn't have to against all that size in Minnesota rematch today. You'd think they'd be even more open to it. So I think Trey Jones low-key benefits. Primo also slightly benefits too. So the minutes could be really high for those, especially Trey. So pretty good Trey spot with the loss of Vassell and all that usage. And Keldon could just really go ham. Jaden McDaniels getting on thin ice. It doesn't sound like Finch has been happy with his performance after that really big opener he had. So we'll see if things could kind of shake out. But Keldon could be, if he could avoid the Gobert stuff at the rim, he could really put up a high usage game, and maybe he could translate to have some efficiency as well.
Yeah, this feels like a really big bounce back spot to me for Minnesota, especially from a defensive standpoint. You take away Vassell and you just take away a potential focal point that you have to pay attention to defensively, and you get into Josh Richardson, who isn't quite that. Keldon Johnson, you can focus more of your attention around. And Jakob Poeltl really kind of ate up Rudy Gobert in the first matchup between these two. I would expect Rudy to come back in a pretty strong way today. So it'll be an interesting thing we'll talk about on the DFS show, but on a bigger slate, you would think Vassell being out, and it's going to make a lot of the Spurs guys look really good from a projection standpoint. I might be a little bit more hesitant on the field. We'll talk about more on the premium show behind the paywall tonight. All right. Also, Terry Rozier and Cody Martin for Charlotte. We saw them play without these guys on Sunday, I believe it was, and Dennis Smith Jr. stepped in, and Charlotte got a big road win. I mean, blew out Atlanta in Atlanta without LaMelo Ball, without Terry Rozier, without Cody Martin, without, everybody essentially. So what do things look like tonight with Rozier and Cody Martin still likely sidelined?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to get a pretty good workload here in a matchup that is iffy. The Knicks are giving up a lot of 3-pointers, but their paint defense has been pretty good. DSJ, not a great shooter. He took advantage of just so many missed defensive assignments and
he got a lot of layups. He shot 50% from the field. He's not a very good shooter, but it was probably an earned 50% given the quality of looks that he had in that game. Like it wasn't wasn't an unusual shooting performance. He was just getting really easy looks.
Yep. Absolutely, yeah. So more on the Hawks for sure.
Yeah.
When he got the DeJounte matchup a pretty good bit. So I know you like to come at matchups don't matter. That would have been Exhibit A for DSJ not being able to, being able to dominate DeJounte's minutes. Just quick on DeJounte. I want to see DeJounte like step up on defense. McMillan was really upset with the overall defensive play. So just side note, Trae Young is the cover boy, but we'll see. Pretty straightforward minutes. They'll run a little bit bigger with JT Thor, Jalen McDaniels as more of a 3-4. We've seen Teo Maladon playing basically right behind DSJ, and she'll get a pretty good amount of minutes for the wings.
Yeah, I thought
Hayward's usage has been good.
I was going to say, I thought Maladon played fine in that game too. Mm-hmm. They had a couple runs with the second unit, which was shocking to me.
Yeah.
That they put on these runs with the second unit against Atlanta. But so I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. Dennis Smith Jr. with Maladon behind him, Kelly Oubre with Book Knight behind him, Gordon Hayward with McDaniels behind him, PJ Washington with Thor behind him, Mason Plumlee with Nick Richards behind him. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward 10-man. And we'll see if Charlotte can keep playing the way that they have, because wow, it's been really impressive to start the season the way that they have, without LaMelo and without Rozier for more than they've had him basically at this point.
Yeah, Nick Richards has been on fire. Really tough test. That Knicks bench has been ridiculous on defense. I believe the defensive lineup has their bench lineup has the best defensive rating among lineups with 24 minutes. They've been lights out, like 82 defensive rating or something.
Yeah.
So,
and the Knicks have had a very soft schedule to start the season, and this continues kind of tonight. But this is kind of the expectation of this Knicks team, right? Is that the bench unit, they're a very deep team. Their starting unit has a lot of talent on it, but can have some inefficient decision makers that lead to them playing from behind. And then the second unit is very, very strong. And only going to get stronger as the year goes on when Quentin Grimes, if he can ever get healthy. But this is another good spot for the Knicks. We'll see if Charlotte can kind of keep it going as they have been able to early on in the season. All right. Any other injury notes that you wanted to tackle before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I think we kind of said it all here. Really exciting slate. Matchups is up. It is. I told myself when I started writing yesterday afternoon, like, okay, don't go crazy. And of course, I wrote over 5,000 words. Like, how am I not going to? It's too good right now.
As is usually the case, hard to keep Mike Gallagher down. All right. We will be back for another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern to cover a 4-game slate. In the meantime, you can find us behind the paywall tonight at 5:00 Eastern with myself and Cash Game Gary. It used to be GPP Bro Gary, but Gary flag planted a 70% owned Norm Powell last night. So he is now Cash Game Gary until he can earn that GPP Bro card back. We'll be behind the paywall at 5:00 Eastern tonight. If you are interested in subscribing to our DFS packages or our props packages, make sure to check out Established Run NBA subscribe button, and you can see more information and more details on those packages. If you're not interested in a paid premium subscription during the course of the season, please consider at least giving us the clicks. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here, get notifications when we go live, and make sure you can press, smash, or gently hold down that like button, the little thumbs up, because we want to feed that algo. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.